Welcome, my name is Esther Nekesa, and here at the University of Nairobi, I'm with our guest lecturer, Professor Dr. Kai Kresse. I hope I got that right, who will tell us more about himself, and yeah, we'll go on from there. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, please tell us, I've already said you're a guest lecturer, so tell us your university, your institution, and the faculty you're visiting.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm a professor of social and cultural anthropology at the Free University of Berlin, and I'm also vice director of the Leibniz Zentrum Moderner Orient, which we abbreviate as ZMO internationally. And that is an interdisciplinary research center for interdisciplinary research on Africa, the Middle East and South Asia, based in Berlin. And before studying anthropology and doing my PhD in anthropology, I actually studied philosophy and African studies. And in my studies of philosophy, I came across the work of Henry Odera, who used to be a very important professor here.
Here you're attached to which faculty?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
He was a founder actually of the Department of Philosophy here in the early 1970s. And now I have been in continuous touch and exchange with some of his students, like Professor Odera, Professor Owaka, Professor Odera, in the philosophy department. And so we have active exchange, but we are also facilitating exchange here with the anthropology and literature departments and hope to build, because this is a newly signed partnership now, funded through the Erasmus Global Exchange Program. And so this week I'm here to teach and to exchange with colleagues. At least we've spoken, and I know it's not your first time in Kenya and at the University of Nairobi. And so I would like to know your experience, your experience with the institution first, and then now we can go on to this now under this umbrella. With the institution? University of Nairobi. University of Nairobi, yeah. So actually, I first got here in 1993, while I was, because I wrote a letter to Professor Oruka from Zanzibar, where I was actually based as a language student of Swahili, where I had a language scholarship, learning scholarship, and had sent him some of my translated work of mine on African philosophy that had been published in German. And I sent him that together with a letter to ask for an audience, for an interview, because I would be traveling back to Germany via Nairobi. And he was so gracious to respond to me and wrote me a letter to Zanzibar and said I could come and visit him. And so then I prepared and visited him here and interviewed him, and the interview was later published. But I also have to say that he was such a sort of a gracious man and personality who granted me the time as an undergraduate student. He also invited me 2 years later to a conference that he had organized on World Future Studies Federation and the Eradication on Poverty as a project. And I got to meet more of his students and more other researchers from different disciplines here and internationally. And so it was almost like a little bit of a mentor role that he, a little bit of a role model and mentor role that he also played for my own career, or my very early career as a student back then, and that gave me a lot of motivation. And I used his work was quite inspirational for me too. He made the argument that as a philosopher working on philosophical traditions in Africa, you should actually also do fieldwork, and you should travel around the country to interview wise men and women and document these interviews and discourses to show how there's intellectual activity, creativity and intellectual
thinkers. So that's 1983.
So no, that was 1993. Yes, as an undergraduate,
and then
I had read his work already, and so I had questions about that and studied further, and
All right, and then you went, and then you came back after that interview, after that engagement or interaction.
Exactly. Yes, I was lucky to get some funding from the German side to attend the conference. and that was in the summer of 1995. Well, and as we all know, unfortunately, he died in December 1995, and me and others, we were involved in then publishing a volume in his memory, which came out in 1997.
Others from here?
This is
University of
a
Nairobi.
Sagacious Reasoning volume, this one. And then actually last year, together with Odera, I co-edited a volume on rethinking sage philosophy that takes up the relevance of Oruka's approach for contemporary debates, or in a way also engages with the ongoing significance and relevance of his work. And we're trying to get a Kenyan edition together, this a Kenyan edition on this together, and then out hopefully quite soon. So we're planning for a bookshop in Nairobi for a Kenyan edition.
Oh, nice, because I was going to ask whether these are available here. All right, so Prof, I've heard you mention Kiswahili, I've heard you mention anthropology and philosophy, and now you're here at the Department of Philosophy. Is that what you teach?
In Germany, I teach in the anthropology department, but it is important that I bring in some of the literature on African philosophy, because there is also an important need and also an important interest by the students to read more thinkers from the global south, and especially Africa. And I think in any case, for anthropology especially, but also for other disciplines, it is very important to look beyond disciplinary boundaries. And so, reading stimulating, important texts by African philosophers, by Kenyan thinkers, or including Oruka, or Ngugi wa Thiong'o, or Okot Bitek, or Olufemi Taiwo, and many others, Dismas Masolo, another Kenyan philosopher. So this enriches then also my teaching and the thinking and the discussions that anthropology students have in their reflection on how anthropology relates, or also how anthropological theory or theoretical thinking can be enriched by approaches and theories from these thinkers.
And how has your experience been in the classroom? Are you finding our students, more exposed? Have they read? Are you the one enlightening them?
Yeah, actually, most people, many of the students have not read these, but they're actually very happy that these readings are offered, because they nowadays they feel really a strong urge that there should be more. The canon should be changed, right? There should be a critical sort of reform of the classical readings in anthropology. There should be much more of an integration of intellectual traditions and thinkers from the global south. So under this broader topic of decolonization, which is an important topic to address and challenge, but also we have to be going about it quite carefully and not, let's say, building also consciously on the constructive work that is done before from different sides and disciplines. But the students appreciate this very much.
Okay. You've said it's a newly signed agreement. So how does it look like, going forward?
Yes, so we hope to have some members of staff visit us quite soon, within the coming year, hopefully, in Berlin. And then there's also an opportunity for graduate students to visit for longer periods. So the anticipation, or the provision is the possibility of visiting between 2 and 6 months for individuals, both ways. And the staff visits are between 1 and 3 weeks, I think. So there teaching and exchange is involved, and graduate students are supposed to use this for their research, sort of more in-depth library exchange, research visits, and so on.
Okay. So there's one question that I normally ask visiting lecturers. I know it's not your first time in Nairobi, not your first time in Kenya, University of Nairobi, but is there anything that has struck you in terms of either our culture or anything that we do differently that could either, has almost limited our perception or that has opened up, or that has given us a different perspective from what you're used to, of course?
I'm not quite sure. I would maybe tend to answer maybe not quite the question that you're asking, but what I've been taking away from my visits here at the University of Nairobi is the sense of I feel there's a very interesting sense of community among staff, or that there's also a lot of exchange. It seems like the senior common room as sort of a platform, as a point of communication and exchange. And this, for instance, is something I would like for my own university, maybe to have established more. And so that's a good tradition that I think I've come across here. And otherwise,
That's interesting, Prof. Anything that you may want to tell us about your university and what our faculty can look forward to as they apply for the opportunities?
Well, I mean, the Free University of Berlin is a very large university as well. It prides itself on its international links, but I think is also now catching up. We're in terms of its relations with Africa. So we've been now quite eager, I think, to establish these partnerships with Nairobi and other African universities, because there is a sense there is much more to be learned, to be engaged in dialogue with, and to be benefited from in terms of such an exchange. And so that's quite on the cards, on the radar from the Berlin side as well.
Do people speak English in your?
Yeah, I mean, almost everyone. So English is a must-do subject for all secondary schools. So actually, young Germans would be normally quite fluent in English, but it could still be improved, the standard. But it's not like, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, where the older generation was sometimes quite rocky in English. Nowadays, you have good fluency.
Is it a requirement for someone to come and study in your university?
No. Because for undergraduate degrees, normally the language of instruction is in German. There are quite a lot of master's courses in English, but full degree programs, like for instance, we in anthropology, we don't have an English-speaking degree program in either for masters, but we welcome as doctoral students, and we also welcome master students, and there is a certain provision of Anglophone courses. So I actually usually teach in English because I got my PhD in the Anglophone system in Britain and taught in America as well. So I'm used to it, and we always have international students. And so we also try always to offer a certain amount of courses in English, and I'm happy to teach them and usually teaching them.
All right. Thank you, Prof. That's enlightening for sure for the people who would want to apply for those opportunities. So what, do you feel like I've forgotten something to ask you, or do you have a parting shot?
Well, maybe just because I mentioned that briefly just now, I could just explain the trajectory that I did my first degree, and which was actually in Germany then a master's degree with 6 years of study in philosophy, and I did my sort of African studies and learning Swahili at the university from the very first semester for those 6 years. And then I went to do a master's degree in anthropology at the LSE in London, and then a PhD in anthropology and African studies at SOAS, also University of London. Then I had a first job as a lecturer in anthropology at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. And after a first period in Berlin, I had a job as an associate professor in African studies at the Columbia University with a specialization on the Swahili studies field. And then I got back to Germany and got the professorship at the Free University of Berlin and the position at the ZMO. So just for the information's sake. But,
so maybe just a last question. Something piqued my interest. From where you stand or sit, how does Kiswahili look, or how is it performing generally in terms of uptake?
Uptake, yeah. Well, I mean, we have a strong interest. I mean, by students in Swahili, though actually it is Humboldt University in Berlin that is doing the language teaching. So at FU we have quite a strong regional interest. But maybe what's also interesting for you to know is that me and my colleague, a German but excellent Swahili speaker, Lutz Diegner at the Humboldt University, together we organize a regular Swahili-speaking discussion forum that takes place online, but unifies a sort of an international group of participants. So we invite speakers who present their topic usually of research, but it could also be a more wider topic of interest. And we present and discuss in Swahili only. And that has really now been going on for 5 years or more.
Oh, wow.
And we had an earlier phase already. So, and that is really very rewarding because we integrate, let's say, speakers with a good degree of fluency who are graduate students from Germany with motivation, but also mother tongue speakers from Tanzania and Kenya. And then Wazee or Utafiti, people like Abdelatif Abdallah or Professor Mohamed Bakari or Farouk Topan, they join us regularly. And so it's really a very nice forum that facilitates exchange, news about research and these kind of things. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Yeah. Quite interesting to learn. Thank you, Prof. Do you want to tell us about your books? Maybe so that we wrap it up.
I'd be very happy to.
Yes, please, go ahead. Please do.
Well, maybe also because we have the Oruka reference, we started off that. I myself did a PhD on philosophical thinkers and philosophical discourse in Mombasa, in the Old Town, where I then lived for 1 year of fieldwork in 1998 to 99. And I, in 3 chapters of my book, I portray 3 different individual thinkers, 2 of whom are Swahili poets. One of them, Ahmed Nasser Jumabalu, one of them, Ahmed Sheikh Nabahani, and then another former politician and then Islamic scholar, Sheikh Abdullah Nasser. And so this work was inspired by Oruka in the sense that he also zooms in on individual relevant thinkers within their communities of Kenya. And in some ways I expanded upon his project of sage philosophy and developed my own take. And so obviously I conducted the research in Swahili, and I've actually stayed in touch with these individuals and their families for quite a while. And I'm now collaborating, for instance, with the son of Ahmed, of the poet Ahmed Nasser, who is Najib in Mombasa, who's himself a poet and a photographer and filmmaker. And so we collaborate on aspects of my research and his activities as well. And the second monograph of mine was, in a way, continuing the work that I've done before. This is Swahili Muslim Publics and Post-Colonial Experience, where I basically, it's slightly more historically oriented and looking at the internal debates among coastal Muslims in Mombasa and Lamu, sort of on the Kenyan coast, and also taking early published texts from the 1930s by Sheikh Alamin Mazrui, who was the father of the Professor Ali Mazrui. And so Sheikh Alamin Mazrui was a very important thinker, but wrote very short pamphlets that tried to wake up his community and stimulate them to be engaged in different aspects of reforming society and so on. So one chapter is dedicated to him and his thinking and writing. Another chapter is dedicated to an Islamic newspaper of the 1970s called Sauti Haki. And another chapter is dedicated to a radio station, basically live radio debates on the Radio Rahma radio station in the early, from 2005 to 2007, where I also engaged personally with. So I I listened to those Vipindi and so on. Yeah, so then I translated together with Hassan Wakimako some of these writings of Sheikh Alamin Mazrui. So we have a nice Swahili
English bilingual edition with annotations, which has actually also been co-published in Tanzania with Mkuki na Nyota, and should be available in Kenya as well. And this gives also those who are non-Swahili speakers a good insight into what was actually said at time. Yeah.
Wow.
And if I should say something on these, well, maybe then I should first briefly say something on this. This is a book on Abdulatif Abdallah, who was I would say one of the most important Swahili poets, who was also one of the first political prisoners in post-colonial Kenya for his pamphlet Kenya Twendapi, Kenya Where We're Heading To, which he wrote as an anonymous critical pamphlet, critical at the time of the dictatorial tendencies in the early government around 1968. So he was put in prison for 3 years and wrote his famous volume of Sauti ya Dhiki, his set of poems there.
Wow.
And so we have a number of documents and contributors, including Ngugi wa Thiong'o in here.
I can see him.
And a reprint of the pamphlet itself. That was also translated into English by myself.
And you're saying this one is not available here, or it is?
This one is available here. It should be. It's published also by Mkuki na Nyota from Dar es Salaam.
Oh.
Yes.
Nice.
And we hope to actually, one should add that just a month ago, the English translation of these poems was published, and in America, but the Kenyan, the East African edition will also be published by Mkuki na Nyota, and we're also currently planning for a book launch in Nairobi. Maybe around the turn of the year, hopefully soon. Yeah.
I'm sure you know more about our history than we know about our history. Now that you've interacted with all this, all right, go on.
Yeah,
clearly.
So and these ones these are now recent volumes of of the concern with the challenges and demands of decolonization in scholarship and for research, and also basically referring to the way that we, on the one hand, employ theory also from the global south to be integrated more fully and to be recognized more fully and to be taken on board. So that is one aspect that we already briefly touched upon. But also there's a critical concern with the practicalities of north-south research collaborations. And what I initiated, co-initiated in Berlin was we pooled with a number of professors and senior researchers. We pooled our personal long-term networks with researchers in my case in East Africa and other parts of Africa, and other colleagues from their research regions. We pulled this together, and that was also then over the Corona period, had monthly online meetings with then a whole trans-regional group of scholars who then we concerned ourselves with basically listening to each other. What are the issues? What are the problems that we're seeing when sharing basically a joint vision of trying to facilitate better exchange, but also more visibility and more visibility of academic scholarship from the global south. And these volumes are published open access as well. So they can be clicked upon and the books completely downloaded in a second for no price at all. These are basically the library volumes and the real books.
The rethinking of the world and thinking with the South. Oh, nice. So interesting what you're saying, because very practical, because that's where we're going. As much as we are collaborating, then what's really practical? Because most of them, signed in the boardrooms, and then when we go about implementation, then that's when we realize there are a lot more challenges than, what was visualized. But anyway, thank you so much for coming, Prof.
Thank you.
I hope now we've finished. There's no another parting shot. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Prof, for coming, and thank you for giving us this time. I hope you enjoy your stay, the rest of your stay at the University of Nairobi, and do have a good one.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
UNC TV, empowering you.